Welcome back, Buccaneer fans. It is a NFC South division winning edition of the No Quarter Given podcast. I'm your host, Jason Powers, along with Peter Blake. Peter, our Buccaneers have now moved to 11-4, NFC South division champions. What are your thoughts? First of all, hope you had a Merry Christmas.
I did. It was a Merry Christmas. Lots of hanging out with the nieces and nephews, if you will, especially the niece, teaching her how to say Tampa Bay. Now that has become my intro for my show, of course, the Sports Web. But look, you've got to love this effort. I mean, with all the injuries the Bucs had, and a lot of people saying, you know what, Carolina coming into this game, we talked about it defensively, 36 sacks, getting after it with various players, and they weren't able to do anything. This offensive line shut them down. They protected Tom Brady, but it wasn't all Tom Brady, was it? It was the defense, 7 sacks versus Cam Newton, who is a shell of himself. Sam Darnold. I feel like the Panthers don't have a quarterback, and that Bucs defense proved that. Jordan Whitehead all over the place. And then the setting of the tone. Keyshawn Vaughn, who's done very little and has made a lot of fans say, you know what, we should get rid of this kid. Maybe not. 55 yards to the house with Sorrell Grayson with the block. And then on top of it, my guy, the victim of volume and a Ronald Jones, a total of 31 carries, 159 yards total between the rushing effort. They ran the ball more than they passed the ball. They played defense. It was a perfect effort, and you had to have that 32-6 over the Carolina Panthers. Very little not to like about this game besides the obvious one, Shaq Barrett going out with an injury, and it looks like Jason Powers, he's going to miss some time.
No, it does. It does. And so the day after Christmas, Bucs go to Carolina, 32-6, emphatic performance, very solid effort. First division title since 2007. And like you said, a very balanced attack. I like how they ran the ball with some consistency. You and I talked, let's give Ronald Jones 20 carries, and he got exactly 20 carries. Not a huge yardage, but 65 good yards, a touchdown. And then you supplement that with Keyshawn Vaughn with the long 55-yard touchdown run. Brady was efficient in the passing game, mixed it around. Cam Brate with the touchdown catch. You had some other guys, Sorrell Grayson with a big catch late in the first half down the sideline. So Antonio Brown, we're going to get to him here in a second. What a performance coming back. Again, I know people have different views of Antonio off the field, but on the field, we all have to admit he's a hell of a player still. He got 15 targets, 10 catches for over 100 yards, and he clearly was Tom Brady's go-to option anytime they got in third and long.
Yeah, and what a breath of fresh air, because when you're missing Evans and Godwin, of course, it's going to hurt your offense, and you got a guy that missed 8 games, came in there, faced a Stephon Gilmore, who, some people believe he's one of the top corners in the league. Not on Sunday, guys. Brown absolutely took him to school. It was refreshing to see Brown back in that offense. And, of course, see Grayson with the deep pass there. So, these two guys, they may be, big down the stretch. You're still waiting for Tyler Johnson. You're still waiting for Scotty Miller. And I feel like Gronkowski, the last couple of games, has really dropped the ball. Look out versus the Jets, my friend. Gronk may eat on Sunday.
Yeah, and again, Rashad Perriman coming off the COVID list this week. He'll be back in the mix. Again, I think the Bucs, I hate to say this, I think the Bucs are gonna, I think they really like Grayson. I think Grayson's really endearing himself to the staff. I think Scotty Miller and Tyler Johnson will be desperation plays for the Buccaneers. I don't think you're going to see them on the field a whole lot. I think you're going to see Antonio Brown, Perriman, and Grayson a lot. I think you're going to see, we talked about it as well, the 3 tight ends. O.J. Howard played a lot more snaps Sunday. Carolina, Cam Brate with the touchdown. Gronk. I think that's the way you're going to see the Buccaneers go offensively until Evans comes back, which will probably be, I'm going to say, in the wild card game. I think they're going to keep him out of the last 2 heading to the playoffs, and I think you're going to see, if he plays at all, you're going to see him in the wild card game for Mike Evans. And so, again, quality effort defensively. Again, very impressive. The pass rush was good. Lots of different guys got involved. Anthony Nelson with a sack, Golston with a couple sacks. Again, the injury concern, Shaq Barrett, that could be costly, obviously. Maybe not in the wild card game theoretically, but that divisional game and maybe that championship game if you get there, if Shaq Barrett can't come back. And obviously he's got a sprained MCL, ACL, which you never know how that goes. We all think those things heal in 2 weeks, but they don't heal that fast usually. Usually it's a 3 or 4 week injury, probably at the minimum, if not longer.
Yeah, and then you got COVID to mix in there. You got Mike Evans out with COVID. He's not going to play anyway, but BA now on the COVID list, Sean Murphy-Bunting, Jamel Dean. I mean, it's just one thing after another, and this team still finds a way to win.
Yep.
And I think going back to Grayson, the most impressive thing is not his deep route running and getting open. It's his blocking down the field. And if you don't have that block to spring Vaughn out there, he doesn't have that big play. So I think that's what the Bucs are looking at. They're looking at the total package when it comes to a wide receiver. That's what Godwin could give them. Obviously, that's what Grayson can give them. And going back to it, look, this team has faced a lot of adversity. If they could just get healthy, if you could see that back end healthy, you saw how Whitehead played on Sunday. If this offense could get healthy, man, oh man, they would be something special to watch. And unfortunately, you're not going to get to see that because Godwin is out. But everybody else, you hope that you can have him back for the start of the postseason.
Yeah, for sure. And again, Bucs with 2 games to go in the season. Obviously, we're going to talk about the Jets coming up this week. They got Carolina week 18 in Tampa. So still a lot to play for. They can still get the 2 seed. Obviously, the NFC is kind of the Green Bay's probably going to be the 1 seed, but the 2, 3, and 4 slots are up for grabs. Us, Dallas, and now the Rams are in the front spot in the NFC West, with Arizona kind of nosediving the other direction. So the Bucs still have a lot to play for. You can't slip up here against the Jets, a game you got to win. And then we'll see what happens in week 18, depending on the standings and the scenarios, how much the Buccaneers starters play, that kind of stuff. So we'll see how that goes. But let's get to the New York Jets this week. Let's do that.
Yes,
right.
Just in the season.
Yes. This Jets, they won last week. They beat Jacksonville, so a little bit of confidence with the Jets. You got Zach Wilson played okay last week. You had Robert Saleh was out with COVID. They win with the interim head coach, Ron Middleton, who's a former Tampa Bay Buccaneer. Ron Middleton back in the day, back in the late 80s, 90s. Middleton I believe he was a tight end with the Buccaneers. I believe that's where he played in his career. So he was the interim coach. We head up to MetLife Stadium, the Sunday 1:00 game. Bucs all-time record is 2-10 versus the Jets. This is the one franchise we have beaten the least in our franchise history.
Yeah, not many good memories. And this goes all the way back to the 80s, but I can remember early 90s there. The Jets are one of the garbage franchises, but that's how bad the Bucs were back then. They couldn't even beat the Jets and have not been able to beat the Jets. So some bad memories there. And not a lot of good stuff. We can definitely talk about this. I know we're going to go through the timeline, but 2-10, man, ain't nothing to write home about. And
they've only played them, and think about it, they've only played them 12 times over the course of 45, 46 years, something like that. Right. So not even a lot of games they've played. But again, a dismal 2-10 record against the Jets. As we approach meeting number 13, hopefully it's not an unlucky 13 as we head up to MetLife on Sunday. All right, so let's first of all, before we get to that, it's been a sad week in the NFL. John Madden passing away on Tuesday. Give me your general thoughts of John Madden. I know you and I are similar age. We've grown up with the Madden video game. We've known John Madden as a announcer. We're both a little young for John Madden as a coach to really appreciate that. But just your general thoughts on the passing of John Madden.
I mean, a sad day for the NFL, a sad day for anybody that loved football. And you just got done watching all Madden on Christmas that, NFL Films and Fox put together a splendid presentation of his life's work. And they did it in an hour and a half, and it's amazing. But you didn't know he was the winningest Raiders coach in their history. You didn't know that he was one of the youngest coaches of all time to win a Super Bowl. And then he basically gets burned out, becomes an announcer, and he becomes your family friend. And I was talking to my buddy tonight, Leo Haggerty, and I said, you kind of remind me of John Madden. And he said, why? And I said, it's like the grandfather I never knew. And you almost felt like, even if you didn't know the guy personally, but you felt like you did because of the way he talked to you, the way he taught football. And then, of course, the transition process going from a broadcaster to Madden football. Who doesn't play Madden football these days? I am 43 years old and I will still play Madden football until I'm dead. I don't care if I'm married. I don't care what happens. I love that game. And if you're a football fan, you have played that game numerous times with your friends. So a lot of great memories with my father, of course, passing on playing Madden with him, and then sitting down and watching the game of the week. And it was usually the 49ers or the Cowboys or something. And when Pat Summerall and John Madden came to town, it was a special event, especially when they called Bucs games, because they never called Bucs games back then. When they did, boy, you paid attention. And it was all, I know he had an infatuation with big linemen. There's one story where it's Frank Middleton, and I believe it's against the Green Bay Packers. He's like, this guy's a big guy. Look at his posterior there. It was that type of stuff that made you want to watch it. It was simplistic, but it was beautiful at the same time because it kept your attention. Rest in peace, John Madden. Unbelievable icon.
And I think if I'm not mistaken, and we might be able to verify this on buckpower.com, I think Madden's first game he did for CBS might have been in Tampa. I might have been. I know he did a game in Tampa that first year he worked for CBS in 1980, but I might have to check that. But I think maybe his first game he ever did was maybe in Tampa.
I think you're right. Because I was watching that the other night and he was talking from Tampa. And of course, he wasn't on the A team at that point. He was, just a, second or third guy there.
No, he was a floater. They moved him around to several different lead announcers. So before he got hooked up with Summerall, that was one of the interesting things. I thought he bounced around from Vin Scully to Jack Buck to different guys.
Who was his first guy, his first play-by-play guy? Little guy, and became famous, of course, to me, he should be the baseball commissioner one of these days.
Well, he did his and I know you're talking about, he did his tryout performance when CBS was trying him out. He did a tryout with Bob Costas.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Right. And he did it in LA, right? I mean, that's where you played. That's where you played all your games at that point. And then it's kind of like a different perspective. And he was saying, who's this little guy? And then the little guy starts to talk and he's like, whoa, this guy might be good. Madden knew it. He knew he was good. And it was so funny because he wasn't intending to being a broadcaster. He actually went to a college course and was teaching people how to watch football, which is, of course, Jason Powers, I'm taking all day long with John Madden. Imagine that back then. So such a cool story. And there's so much history there and lineage, if you will, with Troy Aikman and Brett Favre. He loves him. And the Dallas Cowboys and Nate Newton and, of course, Lawrence Taylor. He started the all Madden thing, the production when it started on Christmas on Fox. They were talking to him and they were saying, oh, the NFL wants you to do something. And he's like, I'm not doing it. And then they mentioned Madden and he says, I'm absolutely doing it. That's how much respect he had for Madden.
And then from a production perspective of TV games, Madden was instrumental in revolutionizing how these networks cover the games. He came up with the first down yellow line. That was his idea to have that yellow line on the screen for us all to see where the first down is. He was also the first one to say, let's go talk to the coaches and the players on Saturday before the game. Let's go watch practice as a crew, as a broadcasting crew, to figure out what they're doing, to talk to the coaches and players. So that was never happening before John Madden jumped in the mix.
And the way you're doing your hands right now is the way I do my hands. And you know why? Because we're both Madden fans, and he talked with such emotion, and it's okay. Everybody's like, keep your hands down. No, Madden's all over the place. He has his telestrator. I mean, he's telling you a story. He's painting a picture, and it's a Picasso, my friend, the way he did it. I love John Madden. Love him.
And as a coach, he's very underrated because he won over 100 games in 10 years. He was 32 years old when he was when he got hired by the Raiders, retired at 42, basically, after his 10-year run, which nowadays is unheard of that a guy would retire after at 42 years old, never came back. And, a lot of guys quit, get fired, resign, whatever, and they come back 2 or 3 years later or a year later. Madden never came back.
I'm amazed by that. I'm surprised that, and he has one of the highest winning percentages of all, like
second or third all-time winning percentage.
It's amazing at that point. It's like 100 wins with the Raiders, and you would think, why would he started out as a linebacking coach, and he went from that coach, and that was the greatness of Al Davis at the time, and people just remember how crazy Al Davis was. But
Right.
before that, he was instrumental in, the AFL and,
Yep.
and the NFL and AFC, NFC coming together. And that was one of his wisest moves, if you will. And I can't believe he burned out because he loved football so much, but you knew that he was going to become a great broadcaster. He just had it. He had that emotion about him. He had that personality. People said he was like a cartoon character, and you saw him do Saturday Night Live. You saw him do these commercials. It's so funny. Like, this guy was ahead of his time. It's just amazing.
And remember, he oversaw the Raiders when they were the Renegade Raiders of the 70s. I mean, it was no holds barred. Those guys were allowed to do, I won't say whatever they wanted, but they had a lot of characters. Kenny Stabler, Jack Tatum, all those kind of guys.
All these outcasts.
Yeah.
No teams wanted. Yeah, It's amazing. Dave Casper. I mean, some amazing games there and rivalries, if you will, with the Steelers and the Dolphins. It's just some great.
And just imagine how many Super Bowls he literally could have won in that 10-year period if it wasn't for the dynasty of the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Miami Dolphins in the 70s.
Yeah, because the Raiders were a great team and they have lots of great Hall of Famers. And again, Madden, a Hall of Fame coach, but just sometimes teams have your number. We talk about the Saints and the Bucs. Saints have the Bucs number, but sometimes it doesn't turn out that way. But it was it's definitely very cool to experience him.
Yes.
As
and folks, guy. If you haven't watched the All Madden on Fox, you got to catch it, man. It's great television. They go in depth, a lot of cool tidbits that nobody probably knew about John Madden going into it. So definitely a must watch for you, our Buccaneer fans here and all that. One more guy I want to make a quick mention out to Jeff Dickerson, the Chicago Bears beat writer for a long time beat writer for the Chicago Bears, passed away at 44 years old yesterday as well with John Madden. If you follow sports radio and the Bears, he's a guy that if you're a Bears fan. He passed away. He had a cancer illness. He lost his wife about 2 years ago with kind of a similar illness. He left behind a couple children. So just a terrible, tough day, obviously, in the NFL world, losing Jeff Dickerson and John Madden.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 44 years old. Once again, I'm 43, so that scares the hell out of me. But, instrumental with the Chicago Bears, did some great work with ESPN Chicago there. You always hate to see that because these are the guys that we look to, Jason Powers, for our information.
Yes.
These are the guys that motivate us to do the things that we do with these shows and these podcasts. These are the guys we listen to when we're kids and we grow up, and you say, I just throw it out there. TJ Reeves, he's a guy that I listened to when I was a kid. And that's the type of stuff that inspires you to do a great podcast like this, No Quarter Given, on the buckpower.com podcast network.
All right. So before we get to the Jets, remember buckpower.com is your place for all things Bucs, stats, video, audio clips. You might even see, if you go on there, you might see an audio or video clip of John Madden back in the day doing a Buccaneers game. I think he did his first ever game at Tampa Stadium, but I will get that verified, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. So
he didn't do many after that. I mean, it was like few and far between. It didn't happen until Tony Dungy came here and made this team a winner. I can bet on that, but he may have done one of his first games here. It is the anniversary, and I looked on the website, buckpower.com, of their first playoff victory over the Philadelphia Eagles. 24-7.
Right. I remember that, 1979. Beat Ron Jaworski and company in Tampa Stadium.
Yes. Nice. Harry Carmichael too, right?
That's right. Harold Carmichael, Wilbur Montgomery, Dick Vermeil was the coach.
Who also, by the way, burned out.
Yes. All right, here we go. Let's start with the Jets. 1976. Guess who was the quarterback for the Jets as they got shut out at Old Shea Stadium? 1976 in the Buccaneer expansion year, Peter Blake. I know you know the answer.
Well, I know the answer, but Shea Stadium is a dump. Well, let's just put that out there. But Steve Spurrier was worse that day. So, Steve Spurrier was the...
No, who was the Jets quarterback?
Oh, don't
cheat. Yes.
The Jets quarterback. And this is what year?
76.
It's got to be Joe Namath still, right?
One Joe Willie Namath was still the quarterback for the Jets in 76.
Out of Alabama, just like Kenny Stabler.
Out of Pennsylvania and went to Alabama, 31-0 shutout of the Buccaneers in 1976 in Old Shea Stadium. All right.
By the way, what a dump of a stadium, by the way.
Yeah, that is a dump. The most famous game I remember at Shea Stadium was when the Dolphins played the Jets in a playoff game, and A.J. Dewey for the Dolphins in like 1982 had like 3 interceptions as a Miami linebacker and just played an incredible game in like a mud bowl. It was a rainy, disgusting day in Shea Stadium. A.J. Dewey intercepted Richard Todd like 3 times in a playoff game for the Dolphins to advance in the playoffs. So that's probably it. And also I remember Mark Gastineau in the New York Sack Exchange back in the day. Joe Klecko, Mark Gastineau, and those guys in the early 80s were just dominating on the defensive line.
And they were, and it was always a matchup with the Dolphins. It was always the Dolphins and the Jets, and there was always something to that because there was a lot of Jets fans who always wanted them to draft Dan Marino. And of course, they drafted the greatness of Ken O'Brien. But with respect, Ken O'Brien put up some big time numbers versus the Miami Dolphins. So, and they were competitive to a certain degree. But I
remember Ken O'Brien and Marino played a famous game in the Meadowlands, like 1985 or 86. What, 52-45?
Yep.
It was like a 52-45 game, and it was an incredible, just a shootout kind of game at the Meadowlands. And again, Ken O'Brien had an underrated career. He did a pretty good job with the Jets for a 3 or 4 year period, but he was no Dan Marino for sure.
No, he was never no Dan Marino. And you're right. So you're exactly right. That rivalry in itself was crazy in the 80s.
All right, the only 2 games the Buccaneers have beaten the Jets. We're gonna recap them both here. 1984, end of the regular season in 84. John McKay's final game as head coach of the Buccaneers. You know, remember, John was the original head coach for the Bucs. He'd been there from 76. Couple interesting tidbits here, Mr. Blake.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, John McKay's final game, so you knew it was going to be an emotional game for everybody involved for the Buccaneer franchise. He had already announced, I believe, that he was leaving. Mm-hmm. 2, James Wilder, the Buccaneer great, who a lot of people think should be in the Ring of Honor, that type thing. He was going for an NFL record to try to have the most combined rushing and receiving yards in a season. That was also the same year Eric Dickerson had broken the rushing record. Like 2184 was the number, I believe, for the rushing record. But Wilder had an opportunity to break the all-time combined record in that game. In order for him to do that, and he had a decent game against the Jets. The Bucs were up 41-14 late in the game. McKay, knowing he wanted an opportunity for Wilder to break the record, he tells defensive coordinator Wayne Fonts to tell the defense, we're going to let the Jets score here in the last minute or so we get one more possession to try to break the record. They let them score. They basically lay down and let the Jets score a garbage touchdown. The Jets kick off. The Bucs try to get Wilder the record. They come up short, don't get the record, but they still carry John McKay off the field on their shoulders post-game. And I'm going to get to the tidbit after that, but your thoughts on the Buccaneers trying to get James Wilder that record in 1984.
Well, it's crazy to think that, the defense basically laid down, but we've seen that before happening in games, right? We've seen it happen in the Super Bowl before. I believe it was the Giants and the Patriots, and Patriots are trying to let the Giants running back score. I believe it's Ahmad Bradshaw, and Bradshaw goes down to the 2-yard line. And of course, Patriots end up losing. They always lose to the Giants in the Super Bowl. But it's funny. And then I know you're going to get to this because we got the story from Paul. He talked about this, but the very next year.
Payback.
Bad.
So folks, if you guys were watching last Sunday in the NFL, you saw the Cincinnati Bengals and Joe Burrow. He threw for like 525 yards. And he threw a long bomb at the end of the game. They were killing Baltimore. He threw a long bomb to Joe Mixon to break that Cincinnati record. And the Ravens were not happy one bit about that. The game was out of hand, in hand. All they had to do was kneel down, and they threw a long bomb. So 1985, the Jets play the Buccaneers again here in Tampa. Payback is hell, my brother.
Well, actually, at the Meadowlands.
Okay, you're right. My bad.
That's all right. Go to buckpower.com in order to see that. But you're exactly right.
They jump out the Bucs jump out 14-0 early. So we're all thinking, okay, here it goes again. We're gonna lay the smack down on them again. Well, 62-28 later, the Jets rub it into the Buccaneers, and you can be assured there was payback from 1984 trying to run the score up on the Buccaneers in Lehman Bennett's first year as head coach.
And that defense was so bad, they didn't even have to let them score. They just scored because you couldn't stop them. Ken O'Brien was the quarterback for the Jets at the time. So,
62.
Yes, 62 points. I remember a game, and this is going back to the Bengals, and I believe this is 1988 or 89. The Bengals blew the doors off of the Bucs and was like 56-14. And this is the team that had Sam Weiss and, of course, Boomer Esiason. Welcome to the jungle. And I believe it's 88 or 89. And boy, that was horrible in itself. See, and that's why I got to go to buckpower.com to check that out to see what year that was.
And I can promise you there are clips from that 1984 game and that 1985 game on buckpower.com. But, that's just one of those games where, these teams – I don't care who the coach is, when you run it up on somebody, that organization remembers it, and they're going to stick it to you if they get a chance to do that. And I can promise you, for example, next time the Baltimore Ravens play the Bengals, if they ever get a chance to run it up on the Bengals, they will run it up based on what Joe Burrow did to them last Sunday as well.
Well, sure. Absolutely. Especially when a guy throws for over 500 yards. I mean, the Ravens, you got to stop somebody. And I get it. A lot of people get upset. They go, well, they're going to rub it in. Well, stop them. If you stop them, they're not going to lay down because you never know what's going to happen in the NFL. And this type of thing always happens in college football where, this was about rankings or whatever. And you had to beat a team to a certain degree. And Steve Spurrier was the guy that he would unleash the dogs. I mean, he didn't care. He was not kneeling down. He was clobbering you for that ranking. A lot of people didn't like that, but crazier things have happened. We've seen it. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a memory here, and I know you're going to get to the timeline, but one I always never forget. It's 2013, and I am trying to sell everybody on the fact that all this team needed was Darrelle Revis, Greg Schiano, second year. It's going to turn around. He's coming off the torn ACL. He's playing the Jets. The Bucs look like they're going to win this game. It's an ugly game. And of course, Levante David hits Geno Smith out of bounds, which sets up the Jets, gives them second life so they can kick a field goal. I never forget that game because there was so much hype that year, in my opinion, but it started off so awful with Mercer and Darrelle Revis and this and that. It was just so awful after that. And
I believe that was Carl Nix. Was that the Carl Nix situation when all that started with the Mercer and Lawrence Tynes had the issue in the locker room and all that stuff? And, we never got to see Carl Nix. We thought he was going to be a big time free agent acquisition from the Saints, and that Mercer issue just never allowed him to be a player ever again, really, to the level he was at.
Well, it's an injury situation. He can never, I don't think it was Mercer for him. I think it was for the kicker. But it was for him, that toe injury, it never got better. It was almost like a turf toe for Vinny Testaverde. You remember this in the late 80s to early 90s. He had this turf toe problem, and it was an ongoing situation where he would miss games or he wouldn't play well. And people go, well, he's colorblind. He has turf toe. Well, how many years did he have turf toe for? Aaron Rodgers is playing through turf toe right now. We'll see how, I guess it's turf toe, maybe just a toe injury at this point, but yeah.
Let's get to the 2000s, kind of the Keyshawn Johnson storyline here with the Buccaneers. Remember, Buccaneer fans, the year 2000, the Buccaneers in April of 2000, the Bucs trade 2 number ones to the Jets for Keyshawn. Remember, that was the Tony Dungy timeline. We all thought we were a wide receiver away from really being a big-time offense. Keyshawn Johnson, number 1 pick out of USC to the Jets, disgruntled, didn't want to be in New York anymore. The Bucs basically trade the farm away, 2 number ones, which at that time was a ransom, was a fortune to pay for a wide receiver. Those two number ones turned into John Abraham and another former Buccaneer, a guy that's still been involved with the organization, one Anthony Betts was the other draft pick from those number ones. So Keyshawn Johnson's in the fold for the Buccaneers 2000. We played the Jets that year. Keyshawn Johnson, 1 catch for 1 yard. And the guy he's ripping the whole time he was in New York, little Wayne Corbett, the original little possession receiver who had a hell of a career with the Jets out of Hofstra, caught the game-winning TD pass on a tailback option throw from Curtis Martin, and Vinny Testaverde is the quarterback for the New York Jets as well.
And the Bucs had the lead in this game 17-3. And I'll never forget it. It was terrible weather. All the talk was how Wayne Corbett was the Green Lantern and all this other stuff. Keyshawn did absolutely nothing in that game. The defense shut him out. Parcells, was he coaching also?
I think so.
Parcells was coaching. Vinny Testaverde came back to town and they won the game. And it's just one of those games where you just like, you feel like, just excuse my language, you got kicked in the nuts, okay? Because all you heard all week long was how Keyshawn was going to kill it. Wayne Corbett was nothing. And of course, it comes back to haunt you, and it's got to be Wayne Corbett going in the end zone to secure the game for the game clincher. It's what it's like to be a Bucs fan back then. It was always like that, Jason Powers. You know this.
With Vinny Testaverde at quarterback, and then the guy who jilts us at the altar late in the 80s and 90s, one Bill Parcells as the head coach. I can't
stand because I still think of that moment where he goes on NFL Live on NBC and he goes, "I'm wearing too many hats." And Hugh Culverhouse, everybody thinks the deal is done. And he goes, "I think I got left at the altar." And I feel like that's when Hugh died at that point. You know, it's not years later. That's when Hugh Culverhouse died, because everybody and their mama thought Bill Parcells was going to come out of the booth and be the Tampa Bay Buccaneer coach. And then he did it 10 to 11 years later where he left the Bucs at the altar. So I'm never going to forgive Bill Parcells. And I don't care if he's a Hall of Fame coach. He's a Bucs killer. He should have at least coached one of these teams, and he coached none of them.
God, yes.
I hate the Jets. I hate Bill Parcells.
Yes,
I hate Wayne Corbett. But you know what? It always goes back to it, right? The one that's always talking is the one usually that's going to lose. And I feel like, you know, this franchise has been through it. The fans have been through it. And the emotion of that game, it was just a sloppy game. You just knew something bad was going to happen. And it did. It did.
All right, last meeting, 2017 in Tampa. Bucs win 15-10. Ryan Fitzmagic, our buddies, playing quarterback for the Bucs. You know, the Jets were led by former Buck Josh McCown, Austin Safarian Jenkins. You know, we win 15-10, kind of a ho-hum kind of game. That was Dirk Cutter. That was one of the, that was one of the Dirk Cutter years. You know, just when you really look at this rivalry, there have been some multiple guys that have played for both franchises that have come back to play against the Buccaneers and for the Jets. So just kind of a ho-hum kind of game. You know, this only the second time the Bucs have ever beat them. So let's get to Sunday. Let's get to Sunday in MetLife. Again, a game the Bucs got to win. Bruce Arians has tested positive for COVID. We don't know what his status is going to be for Sunday. Harold Goodwin will be the interim coach if Arians can't coach. Remember, the NFL has now altered the protocols, reducing the time from 10 days to 5 days. So there's still a chance Arians could test negative and coach. Will be interesting to see how that works out. Just your thoughts of the Buccaneers going into New York, potentially without their head coach, but a game that the Bucs really need to win.
They need to win this game. They should win this game. Talent-wise, they're more talented. Of course, you know, the weather could be a factor, but you look at it, Tom Brady's record all-time versus the Jets, 27-9. They should absolutely clobber the Jets, and that's all I want to see. I want to see them clobber the Jets like they did to the Carolina Panthers. Enough with the 2-10. Let's go 3-10 for this team, and they should be able to do it. I get it. They have lots of injuries, but be balanced, especially if it's raining. And even if it's not going to stop Tom Brady from throwing the ball all over the lot.
And again, stay healthy. This is a game you should be able to win, even if you have to play some backup reserve players, even if Jamel Dean and Murphy Bunny can't go. Maybe you get Richard Sherman back in the mix a little bit. You got Carlton Davis. Again, Jordan Whitehead had a tremendous game in Carolina last week. He was all over the field early in that game, really played really well. The defensive line played really well. The depth, I think you're seeing the depth of this defense starting to show themselves with Todd Bowles and company. Remember, Todd Bowles used to be the head coach of the New York Jets. So I can promise you he's going to unleash the dogs from a blitzing perspective against rookie quarterback Zach Wilson.
Yeah, let's see Devin White get after it. Let's see Anthony Nelson throw another lineman on the ground like a rag doll. I mean, how did you not like seeing that, Jason Powers? The 7 sacks from that defensive line, and Jordan Whitehead will absolutely knock your head off sideline to sideline. One of the best games I've seen a safety ever play. If you got that type of production from your defense, you can do anything you want to. And I think the Bucs do that on Sunday.
And again, I think you're going to see more running. I think you're going to see more, especially if the weather is potentially going to be not great in New York. You're going to see a lot of Ronald Jones, Keyshawn Vaughn, maybe even Le'Veon Bell, another former New York Jet. Maybe they get him a couple carries to stick it into his former team one more time kind of deal as well. So I think this could be the kind of game that you could see that. Obviously, Brady has owned the Jets in his career as a Patriot. Gronkowski's had big moments there. Again, stay healthy, go there and get the job done. Don't screw around. Don't mess around and let the Jets hang in the game. You got a rookie quarterback. They're not good at all. This should be a game you win by 17 to 21 points, probably minimum. Take care of business, stay in the hunt for the number 2 seed, and then bring it home for the final finale, the home finale against Carolina in week 18. So give me a score prediction, Peter Blake.
Let's go ahead and go 35 to 10 Tampa Bay. And let's go with the best case scenario. You're handing the ball off to Le'Veon Bell and you're up by, I don't know, 20 or 30 points. And he's just keep on running it to all those years to get through his head. He should have never left Pittsburgh in the first place to go to the Jets. Right. I mean, honestly. So yeah.
All he did with the Jets is steal money.
That's it. He's like another player in baseball. Remember Vinny Castilla came
Vinny
from
Castillo. Yes, Vinny. Yes,
Vinny Castilla. Because that's how he played with the Rays.
So we're looking at 12-4 Buccaneer fans. Remember, buckpower.com. We're part of the buckpower.com podcast network. Paul Stewart has a podcast out about James Wilder, his argument why he should be in the Ring of Honor. So check that out. Again, Peter Blake, tell everybody where they can find you on social media and online.
Yeah, absolutely. On social media. Once again, Peter H. Blake on Facebook. Go and friend me there. On Twitter, pblake1003. And of course, the evolution of sports talk television, the sports web, Monday and Wednesdays on I Love St. Pete. Of course, go like and follow me. Subscribe to the sports web on YouTube. Do 3 things here on this almost New Year's Eve. Yes. Bring the passion, bring your excitement. Just don't bring any nonsense. I'm your host, Peter Blake, giving you something to think about.
All right, before I get to my plugging, what are you doing for New Year's? What's your plans? Any big plans?
The plan is to stay as good as I can because I have to actually get up the next morning and go to the Outback Bowl, be on the field by 10 o'clock. So I got invited to some parties, but I got to be a good boy that night. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to enjoy the football. I'm going to try not to, have too many adult beverages. So and I'm going to watch football. I mean, that night is so weird. That Friday night, it starts at 3:30. I'm off the whole day. So I'll be waiting for that football day to come. Who do you like? Who do you like in those games?
Remember, folks, we got the national championship semifinals. Alabama, Cincinnati, Georgia, Michigan on New Year's Eve, starting at 3:30. I like Alabama, a couple touchdowns over Cincinnati. And I think the Georgia-Michigan game will be a really good game for a long stretch of the game. I think Georgia will find a way to get it done in Miami to get to set up Georgia-Alabama part 2.
And I say I like Alabama over Cincinnati, of course. And I also I like Michigan to win this game to face Alabama. And I've been on this podcast before. I've said it. I think it's Michigan's year to win it all. So we'll see. You would be
You would be in the minority on that one. I can promise you. That's a bold prediction out of my man, Peter Blake. So Buccaneer fans, Powers on Sports podcast. That's where you can find me. YouTube channel, Powers on Sports. Twitter at JPostSports as well. Would love to hear from you on comments about this podcast. Remember, this podcast is all over the podcast platforms, Google, Apple, Stitcher, and Buccaneer fans. And then Peter doesn't know this either. We have a legendary Buccaneer that I think is going to be in the fold for the next episode next week, week 18 against Carolina. We have a Buccaneer legend that I think is going to happen. We're going to have him on the episode, interview a Buccaneer legend. Will probably most likely be on the next episode of No Quarter Given next week with Carolina to wrap up the regular season. So I can't tell you who, Peter Blake.
No hints at this point?
Well, he and me have some things in common. He and I.
Oh, okay. I'm just
Buccaneer fans,
like
if you remember some tidbits that I've told you about myself over the weeks, he and I have something in common that I think we're going to have this guy on next week for the Carolina Panthers. He was a Panther killer too over his career. So you got to stay tuned. No Quarter Given podcast next week. Buccaneers 12-4, we hope. Division title in the bag already. We're playing for playoff position. And Buccaneer fans, we will see you next week on the No Quarter Given podcast.